Straight to the point, I made a video last year about how Knuckles the Echidna was so mismanaged as a character. And right when Sega thought I wasn't looking, this abomination happened.
Calm down. Here, let me make you more comfortable.
Everything I said in my Knuckles video was true. Anyway, that's not the point I'm trying to make here. I've made a lot of videos on Sonic the Hedgehog. I'm admittedly rather passionate about Sonic the Hedgehog, I'm not gonna lie. I've been working on this video for almost a year, and what inspired me is this game trailer that you're currently watching before you, which is for the remake, or sequel rather, of all of these Sega titles, including Jet Grind Radio, Golden Axe, Streets of Rage, Shinobi, Crazy Taxi. This is unprecedented, but it is really dang cool, and I am very dang happy to see that there is some level of effort to stick to the OG that made Sega so awesome. Now, what I'm about to say is not confirmed, but there has been some speculations that Sonic Adventure 3 is in the works, whether it be the next upcoming release or sometime in the near future. Now, we need to consider that these are really polarizing games. Either you love these games or you're objectively wrong. I'm just kidding. Well, if we're just playing hypothetical here, I got a lot of deep personal feelings about both of these games, as y'all know, because, I made a video about how Sega does not deserve the Sonic intellectual property. It just doesn't deserve it. Because I feel that Sega's business decisions have greatly impacted the quality of Sonic games in not only the last decades, but even stemming back to its origins. So that's what this video's thumbnail is about. Consider it a part 1, as part 2 would be, the Knuckles video, spending an hour and a half explaining how a single side character completely collapses the continuity of the Sonic series. Yeah, that was a lot to go through. But yeah, even though I have made more than 3 videos about Sonic the Hedgehog, I want this to be considered a part 3 of the mega trilogy of big-ass Sonic videos. This video is all about a hypothetical Sonic Adventure 3. If I had my hand in making a sequel to these 2 games, what would that look like? No, scratch that. What if we made Sonic Adventure 3? We did that shit. I had a binder in middle school that was specifically dedicated to mapping out Sonic Adventure 3. And I'm so sad that I don't have this binder anymore, because there's a lot that I wrote in that binder that would have made for a really interesting Sonic Adventure 3 experience. But what I can do is speculate from this point forward what a good Sonic Adventure 3 could look like, in my humble opinion. Now, I should reiterate that this is a subjective video. This is absolutely not gospel. I'm not saying that these are the things that absolutely should be in the Sonic Adventure 3 if there ever is going to be one. I'm making this video for fun, fangirl over this stupid bullshit. The first thing that I'm going to say that whatever is in Sonic Adventure 3 needs to follow up whatever narrative plot points were in the first 2 Sonic Adventure titles. Of course, there are games that came before these titles and especially long after these titles, but whatever is in Sonic Adventure 3 specifically, if we are trying to recapture that vibe that these 2 games had, need to narratively fit these games. And I mean only these games. Hey, real quick, I do want to clarify that I do mean all of the games that came before Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, because it is that classic lore that I want to internalize, not just as a nostalgic pull, but to really internalize a continuation of even that lore. Back to the video. No, we're not going to be borrowing plot points from Sonic Heroes, Shadow the Hedgehog, or Sonic 06. And I realize that what I said is somewhat of a controversial opinion, but hear me out on this one. The reason why I made the Knuckles video in the first place is because he's kind of an origin story. I mean, of course he's not the origin story, but his role guarding the Master Emerald is also an explanation for the existence of the Chaos Emerald, which is always something that Robotnik and Sonic are chasing after. Everything that has to do with Knuckles' past and his ancestors and their role throughout history, it gives the Sonic universe a form of connectedness and a narrative motivation for us to keep going. And so, by robbing us of this, it actually robs us of that motivation to keep playing, to want to learn more about these very likable characters. Not only that, but it also helps us take this world as a world seriously. It gives it some form of functionality that is consistent with the rest of the Sonic franchise. Otherwise, if we say that these games are just kids' games and we're not supposed to take them seriously, then what does that say about the kinds of things that we produce that are specifically made for children?
I wonder what those guys are doing.
Yeah, I wonder too. And by that metric, it almost feels insulting that we play these games and there's nothing to really show for it. But that's what we're here to do. We're here to put an end to the chaos. No pun intended. Shadow the Hedgehog is not that important of a character to me personally, but I know that he is to a lot of people. And I know that for a lot of people, the Shadow the Hedgehog game was a real letdown, especially from a narrative standpoint. The whole android thing that Rouge doesn't tell Shadow about, the Black Doom and its relationship to Gerald Robotnik, and of course let's not forget that the game is narratively an absolute fucking mess. But I think that no matter what, we can give Shadow somewhat of an actual redeeming storyline that actually gives him a character worth caring about. And it can exist within the same continuity as to whatever we write for Knuckles the Echidna, as it should, because both Shadow and Knuckles are the backbone characters of the broader narrative of Sonic Adventure 1 and 2. And I'll just mention this now because I know that somebody in the comment section is going to mention it, but I intend to get Sonic X Shadow Generations. It looks like a really good game, and it also looks like a very fun time. But you also have to consider the fact that this is a remaster of Sonic Generations, an already pretty bare bones video game if we're comparing it to Sonic Adventure 1 and 2. The issue with Sonic Generations is that while the game itself is a lot of fun to play with some pretty decent controls and an awesome selection of very nostalgic levels for longtime Sonic fans, it's one of those games where it just gets the job done, and that's not what we're settling for. We're settling for an actual continuation of Sonic Adventure 1 and 2. For example, Sonic Adventure 1 has Help World, where Sonic Adventure 2 took that out, to which I feel worked to its detriment. And even though I don't like Sonic Unleashed and we're not continuing based on Sonic Unleashed here, I think Sonic Unleashed including Hub Worlds in this game actually worked to its benefit. We're going to put a pin on Hub Worlds. I'm going to talk more about Hub Worlds later because I do have quite a bit to say about it, especially in relation to Sonic Adventure 1. But yeah, even though I do intend to get Sonic X Shadow Generations, as awesome as that looks and as awesome as it sounds on paper, I just don't think that I can consider it part of this continuation of Sonic Adventure 1 and 2. Yeah, even with the mission statement that Sonic X Shadow Generation plans to fill in a lot of the plot holes for Shadow the Hedgehog and reveal quite a bit about Gerald Robotnik and Emerald from Sonic Battle, I am being a Sonic Adventure purist about this, and I'm not sorry about it. I'm not going to be apologetic about my intentions here. In my opinion, Knuckles and Shadow are both very ambitious characters, and while I admire the ambition of the story writers and the character designers, I just think that these characters are routinely poorly executed. episode. As I've routinely gone over in my Knuckles videos, the issue with Knuckles the Echidna and his character design and development is that they don't really know what to do with him. He's either very stupid or very gullible, he's a racist caricature, etc., so on and so forth. Just go watch that video if you want the full explanation. But Shadow is a more interesting case because in the last decade, they have used Shadow only to draw more interest in whatever they're working on. They tend to shoehorn Shadow into whatever they're doing, such as Sonic Boom, Sonic Forces, and of course, the upcoming game, Sonic X Shadow Generations. Shadow is a very interesting character. There's a lot of depth to him. There's a lot of emotional parts to his lore, to his backstory with Maria.
Kurt, Stephanie, from each of your perspectives, how would you guys describe the relationship between Shadow and Maria? I know. Look at them. Sorry, guys.
My suggestion would be, why not make Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 in some way connected to each other instead of just a sequel of two random stories, right? Like, why do we need Black Doom talking to Gerald Robotnik? Black Doom is like such a forgettable character, but we have the Echidna people who are all super hellbent on conquest and domination. And to be clear, this goes for both Ken Penday's Archie comic adaptation and Sonic Adventure particularly. And the Sonic the Hedgehog universe is so fantastical, I just don't think that there's a reason to not include some kind of collaboration between Pachymac and Gerald Robotnik. If we are to acknowledge that Gerald Robotnik's goal is to cure Maria's neuroimmune deficiency syndrome, then what's the real difference between Black Doom and Pachyamac's goal? They both want to conquer the world while using the Chaos Emerald. So there's really no point in having Black Doom if we've already got Pachymac. There can be some kind of plot device where Gerald Robotnik maybe goes back in time and talks to Pachymac, or maybe he's found like a stone tablet like Eggman said in Sonic Adventure 1.
Oh, yes! It's just as the stone tablets predicted!
I mean, hell, why not just have Gerald Robotnik go to the stone tablet of perfect chaos and he can have his own plot where the inception of Shadow the Hedgehog was not only a means to hopefully cure Maria, but perhaps utilize the power of the Chaos Emerald by looking into its roots, such as how Chaos is the guardian of the Chow that live by the temple. I'm sorry, but you just don't need Black Doom. I feel like Black Doom was such an afterthought that Shadow the Hedgehog leaves the rest of the Sonic the Hedgehog continuity wildly unanswered. And Black Doom being in Sonic X Shadow Generations is a band-aid solution to a growing problem. So I personally feel that whatever the narrative that Sonic Adventure 3 becomes, if it is ever made, that it needs to stay consistent with the first two Sonic Adventure games, because it is Sonic Adventure 3. And speaking of narrative, there is something else that I want to address, and that is GUN. GUN is an acronym that stands for the Guardian Unit of the Nations, and for all intents and purposes, they are the military of the in-universe country United Federation. What made Sonic Adventure 2 work so well is that this military force is seen as a pretty flawed military. Like, they kind of racially profile Sonic even though they're going after Shadow. And even though Sonic the Hedgehog is the protagonist of the story, he continues to run into the police.
Sheesh, there always seems to be a lot of police around when you don't need them.
My police abolitionist heart is a little biased, and I'm not afraid to admit that. But the depiction of the police in Sonic Adventure 2 is a negative one, and that works to its benefit. Because they're trying to criminally prosecute Shadow the Hedgehog, but they keep going after the protagonist. The police in Sonic Adventure 2 are practically fucking useless. Just like how in real life, and say it with me,
according to the University of Utah Law study conducted in 2020, police solve less than 2% of crime.
Good job, y'all. I knew y'all were paying attention. But in Shadow the Hedgehog, the way the police are depicted is so fucking strange. Because for one, this game was made after 9/11, so the war on terror was pretty much on everybody's mind. And Shadow the Hedgehog came out at a time when war fetishization in video games was at an all-time high. This is just my opinion, but I believe that this cultural zeitgeist that I just described is what informed not only Shadow the Hedgehog and its inclusion of firearms in the game, but also how they depicted guardian units of the nation. Not to mention that in Sonic 06, Shadow is in guardian unit of the nation. Yeah, try to make sense of that bullshit. He's been imprisoned in a fucking capsule for 50 years and now he wants to work for them? Anyway, I think what I'm trying to say is that if they're going to use guardian unit of the nation in Sonic Adventure 3, they need to depict him in some kind of negative light. Because that is how they depicted them in Sonic Adventure 2, and I mean, come on, ACAB, y'all. So then, in Sonic Adventure 3, what kind of story would we want to tell? Well, I think that it's more apparent in Sonic Adventure 2, but I think Sonic Adventure 1 and Sonic Adventure 2 both tell a story of juxtaposition. I'd say Sonic Adventure 2 is a little bit more blatant because it focuses more on good and evil, light and dark, but Sonic Adventure 1 focuses heavily on the past and the present. When Eggman weaponizes chaos for his own personal deeds, he is disturbing something that is generational. And I think that the history of the Echidna people and their motivation for getting the Chaos Emeralds and raiding the Temple of Chao could be better explained and explored as a theme on why pursuing dominance and authority is bad. I mean, making Eggman bad just because he's bad is not enough. This is something that I've complained about in my first video when talking about Sonic Forces. Because Eggman in that game has dominated the world, he's a dictator. But there's no motivation for why he would do this, he just checks a box. I think making Eggman into a settler colonist and imperialist would actually give him the depth as a villain. People would hate him in this game, and people should hate him. Not because he checks the box of being a villain, but because the shit that he does in this Sonic Adventure 3 would be so heinous that we would want to kick his ass. And you know, like, save the day. I realize that I'm gonna get a comment or two about how this is a franchise about a blue hedgehog and that this franchise is targeted toward children and all this geopolitics is a little excessive. But One Piece is about a boy who is made out of literal rubber, and there's all kinds of themes in this show that have to do with war, genocide, slavery, very heavy topics about liberating people from oppression. And given that I'm using elements from the first two Sonic Adventure games to draw upon this narrative, cut me a little bit of fucking slack, y'all.
No one ever cuts us any slack.
Not to mention that One Piece is so popular because of this really captivating narrative that it was the best-selling manga for 11 straight years, and it also won multiple world records because of this. I don't think it is asking too much for me to ask for a little bit of continuity from 3 video games, especially considering that the makers of these games abandoned the continuity after the second one, or at least stopped caring at some point.
Why does this have to happen?
And look, I know that I'm harping way too long about One Piece, but this is important because One Piece takes its ancient history lore super fucking seriously. Like, very, very seriously. So seriously, in fact, that they actually build their antagonist being the world government with the ultimate authority, and anybody who tries to learn about this ancient history is summarily executed by the authority. This makes the world government in One Piece so despised by fans because they have this absolute justice principle, but this principle is logistically flawed. It is self-serving, and yet it gets people killed and it erases history. In other words, interfering with history, which is what I'm suggesting that Eggman in Sonic Adventure 3 should probably do, considering all of the variables in the first Sonic Adventure games. So what if Eggman's goal is world domination? I mean, it always is, but how can we make that particular plot point more believable in this cartoonish world? Well, I have an answer and a pretty solid idea, but in order to explain this idea, I'm gonna need to put a pin on this question and come back to it later. Let's talk about the world that Sonic lives in. Is it Mobius? Is it our world? Is it Chris Thorndyke's world? Is it Sonic Boom's world? We as fans don't really have a straight answer, do we? Well, a few years ago, I saw a video of a fan game that was called Big's Big World. It features Big the cat, and he's navigating this open world, and it has all of the three-dimensional set pieces from all of the three-dimensional Sonic games up until recently. What I like about it is that it keeps everything consistent. It keeps it glued together, albeit a little knee-jerk in terms of how it's glued together, but it's still a really cool idea that I wish I could see in an actual Sonic game. Like, what if for Sonic Adventure 3, we could go back to Mystic Ruins, or Station Square, or the Egg Carrier, or Prison Island if it was explorable as an open world? What if Station Square and the city and City Escape in Sonic Adventure 2 were somehow connected, related, or even, hell, the same damn city? If they're not the same city, then there should be some kind of cultural distinction to separate the two, not just based on location, but also the people, particularly the NPCs that live there. And yes, I do think we need to have NPCs. I do think that we need to have characters that are not necessarily playable. This is a controversial opinion of mine, but I don't necessarily see an issue with human characters in the Sonic world. What I do find an issue with is when they put cops and rich people in the Sonic world. Okay, maybe not exactly, but let's take a look at Sonic X and the Sonic movie trilogy. They're almost kind of like an isekai because Sonic and friends are transported to a different world in both of these properties. But in both of these worlds, Sonic either befriends a super rich kid with a fucking temper tantrum that's worse than Caillou in some cases, or a fucking pig who happens to be at odds with his black sister-in-law. So yeah, maybe let's not have this punk rock caricature of a corporate icon licking the boot and sucking up to the biggest fucking losers in the world. So yeah, when people say that they have an issue with human characters being in the Sonic world, I think what they mean is that they hate when human characters like Christopher Thorndyke and Donut Lord are included into the stories. Because in all seriousness, and with my biases aside, they tend to dilute the story a bit. I don't give a fuck about Christopher Thorndyke and all his friends. I don't give a fuck about Donut Lord and his marriage. I want to see Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, Eggman, Shadow. I want to see all of them duking it out. I want to see bullshit happening with them. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. Yeah, I think we should have human NPCs in this world. And I think since it was already a thing in Sonic Adventure 1, that should be a thing in Sonic Adventure 3. Why the fuck not? They don't have to play like a super huge role or anything. They don't have to be like the main character or steal like a whole 5-minute scene. But they can be in there. I don't see why not. And they can coexist peacefully with the anthropomorphic furries, because why the fuck not? I really don't see the issue here. Either you like Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 or you just don't, I guess. Also, we need trains. I like Sonic on a train. Fuck you. But that's what can make this work so well in world building. It's giving each of these people a bit of culture. Make these NPCs symbolically represent the world in which they live in and the traditions in which they practice. You're probably wondering why I am kind of describing Sonic Unleashed when I'm not including that into this trilogy. And that's because Sonic Unleashed kind of takes place in its own world. You don't see the Mystic Ruins or Station Square again. You get Apatos and Holaska. And there's nothing wrong necessarily with including new hub worlds, but it should exist within the environments that existed within Sonic Adventure 1 and 2. That's why I like Big's Big Adventure, because it at least tries to do that. At least a little knee-jerk, but still, it made a pretty good effort. And I want to see that better executed in Sonic Adventure 3. So, backtracking a little bit, what does Eggman have anything to do with this? Well, remember when I talked about how Eggman was going to be a settler colonist or an imperialist? Well, we can use this plot point to really drive some actual meaningful narratives within the environment. A really show, not tell situation here. We can make the game so that the player interacts with the environment, not like a fucking video game, but like an immersion into the environment. Like, make the characters engage with the NPCs. Make it almost mandatory even. Make the players care about the NPCs. Kind of like Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. Because I feel like the strength of that game is that you can just kind of like start from beginning to end and finish the game pretty quickly, but being able to stop, slow down, and actually talk to the NPCs, it makes the adventure, see what I did there, much more enrapturing. And you know what you can do really to make this even better? You can make Sonic Adventure 3, through this element, define Sonic's entire world. So then Eggman comes along, he starts building power plants, he starts polluting the air, he starts enslaving animals as he always does, and you know, hey, he can even start enslaving actual Sonic characters, like from the Sonic team itself, like the Sonic cast, like Sonic or Tails or Amy or Knuckles or whatever. I want to put an emphasis on the concept of raising the stakes a bit here, because this can give us a motivation to want to liberate our friends, because we've already developed, as players, some kind of relationship with them. So what would Eggman's end goal be here? Would it be to build Robotnik Land or Eggman Land or whatever?
Together, we'll destroy Station Square. And on its ruins, I'll build Robotnik Land, the ultimate city, where I will rule it all.
Well, we can do that, but why would we want to? I mean, maybe he can do that and then more? If we're going to have some kind of Robotnik/Eggman Land involved in Sonic Adventure 3, it cannot be anything like it was in Sonic Unleashed. And I don't mean in level design, I mean in how it was conceived. In the Sonic SatAM cartoon, Dr. Robotnik literally pollutes the entire world. He's pretty much using technological warfare on Sonic and his friends here. This exact concept is even consistent with the very first Sonic game ever, where you start off as Green Hill Zone, and then as you progressively play the game, it gets more man-made, it gets more distorted, until you get the Scrap Brain Zone, and the final boss, where everything is mechanized, there's fire, the whole damn level is completely roboticized to hell. There's not a single living organism in sight. There is nothing organic about Scrap Brain Zone. It is a polluted hellscape. And I just think that in Sonic Adventure 3, if Eggman is going to build Eggman Land or Robotnik Land or whichever one he's going to use, I think this needs to be how Robotnik Land/Eggman Land gets built. He needs to ruin the world in which we built some kind of relationship with. You can't just say, oh, Sonic is going to stop Eggman from collecting all of the Chaos Emeralds and save the day. You need to give Eggman some kind of motivation for being evil in the first place. If we are to compare Eggman Land to like a real theme park, why don't we compare it to an actual theme park like Disney World in Florida? Walt Disney was a big-minded motherfucker, also an anti-communist and anti-union motherfucker, but we're not talking about that today. Walt Disney wanted to build what would effectively be a company town, but for like artists and shit, especially considering he had his own studio in Burbank, California. He hated the traffic congestion in Los Angeles, so much so that he wanted to make sure that this next big project that was going to be in Florida is going to revolutionize anti-pollution measures.
Epcot will be a planned environment, demonstrating to the world what American communities can accomplish through proper control of planning and design. Epcot begins with an idea new among cities built since the birth of the automobile. We call it the radio plan. Picture a wheel. Like the spokes of the wheel, the city fans out along a series of radials from a bustling hub at the center of Epcot.
So, like any American capitalist ever, he finds swampland in the middle of Florida, starts to build it over a 2-year period, effectively killing the swamp life that took place there. You also got to keep in mind that Walt Disney World in Florida was not the first theme park that he built, nor was it the last that the Disney Corporation built either. Given Walt Disney's disdain for congestion and pollution caused by automobiles, the construction of all of these parks were antithetical to Walt Disney's stated goals. According to Medium.com, quote, at present, Walt Disney produces an estimate 16.6 million tons of carbon annually, equivalent to the emission from 3.6 million cars, end quote. This kind of inspiration is perfect for what we can culminate for the construction of Eggman Land. If Eggman Land is to be a narrative plot device for pushing the story forward as the motivation for the antagonist here, then Eggman Land needs to have like some kind of environmental consequences for Sonic and his friends and the world in which they live in. We spent so much time in Sonic Adventure 1 hanging out with Tikal and Pakachamak and all of the Echidna tribe, so why not build Eggman Land in the Mystic Ruins where all of the relics are? And you know what's interesting is that Eggman in Sonic Adventure 1 stated that that was his goal to begin with.
On its ruins, I'll build Robotnik Land, the ultimate city, where I will rule it all!
And even later in the game, you can kind of see he's starting to build that land a little bit. But if Sonic Adventure 3, why doesn't he just go full mask off here? Anyway, let's talk about some other things that are more important, like gameplay. I have a few mixed feelings on this, and I'm not entirely sure if I feel strongly one way or another. Let's explore this. Right off the bat, I'm just gonna say I'm not a fan of Sonic Adventure 2's gameplay style. I don't like Sonic's somersault. I don't like that you have to hold the B button to do a spin dash. I don't necessarily like that B is a designated button for so much stuff like the bounce bracelet, which can lead to a disaster if you're not careful. I'm not a fan of Tails being in his mech all of the time. I'm not a fan of how they botched Knuckles' Emerald Finder to where you have to find them in order instead of whichever one is the nearest towards you. So I'm going to say of the two, and of course it's not the first time I've said this in a video, that Sonic Adventure 1 definitely has the better controls. Sonic moves fast, he's very fluid, he spin dash at the press of a B button, he actually has momentum when he runs and he rolls and he spin dashes and he jumps. Tails actually feels great to control as well. He flies pretty moderately fast and he can fly even faster with the level up item. And Knuckles controls pretty well too. Although I will say, in Sonic Adventure 2, Knuckles can sequence himself into a dig from a glide. And I think that works a lot better than it does in Sonic Adventure 1. Now, here's the thing. I know a lot of people are gonna get on my case if I try to stay too loyal to the first Sonic Adventure game, no matter how popular it is. I will say, for the record right now, that I think that Sonic Frontiers does so much right for Sonic's controls. I cannot say the same for Tails, Amy, and Knuckles with the DLC, but I appreciate the effort in which these characters are being resurrected in a playable fashion. And that's really the thing here, folks. I really want there to be a lot of playable characters. More than 6 or 7. I mean, like, I want there to be a lot of playable characters from the get-go. Or, sure, if you want to have these characters be unlocked as the player plays through the game, sure, you could do that too, but I don't want this to be like Sonic and a Werehunt, or Sonic and Classic Sonic, or Sonic and a shitty OC with very limited character customization options. We need an actual roster of characters, of actual playable characters. And sure, you can even introduce a few new characters if you'd like, if they are consistent with the narrative that you want to build. After all, even in Sonic Adventure 1, Big the Cat and E102 Gamma were new characters, and I would argue that E102 Gamma is one of the best written characters in all of Sonic. I'm not sorry, that's not a hot take. It's just really good. In fact, I'm just gonna have a hot take right here, because fuck you. E102 Gamma has such a good story because it begins and then it ends on such a high emotional note, all within the same story mode. And it doesn't have any sequels or anything, it just ends right there. Whereas like Shadow arguably should have ended right where Shadow falls to Earth at the end of Sonic Adventure 2. Look, okay, we don't need to resurrect characters that die. I mean, sure, you don't want to kill your main character Sonic like you did in Sonic 06, but you definitely want to have some stakes involved here. You know, consequences for not being able to stop Eggman. After all, Eggman has to be the villain here. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm getting way off topic. The point that I'm trying to make here is that there should be a large roster of Sonic characters to play as, and I think each of these characters should be voice acted, and I believe that each of these characters should have their own story mode. Give them character development, give them an arc, give them a theme song. I miss when they used to have theme songs for all of the different characters back in the day. And don't reuse assets for like multiple characters. Don't give multiple characters the same fucking boss or the same fucking level unless like they're going through the level at like a later time or for a different reason. And even so, do that sparingly. Also, speaking of levels, make the levels believable. What do I mean by this? In Sonic Adventure 1, you could enter a level by climbing up a ladder, or entering a cave, or entering a gateway. Make it believable in the context of the hub world. Like in Sonic 06, in order to enter a level, you have to go through a portal. I just think that is so lazy in like world building and level design, and I also think that this particular feature exists to a fault in Sonic Frontiers, where you got like these pillars that could take you to the cyber world. And I don't know, my friends, I don't like seeing Green Hill Zone rehashed for the billionth fucking time in a row. I don't care if it's like Sonic's memory. Give him new memories. Make him move forward. He's Sonic. He goes fast. He goes forward. I don't think that this is unachievable. I believe that making a huge-ass, expansive Sonic believable world is achievable within, well, actually, the means in which we actually currently have now. This is probably going to be the hottest take I have for this entire video, but I just don't think Sega should be the one to make Sonic Adventure 3. Why do I say this? Well, first of all, Sonic Adventure 3 is just not going to be made by Sega, and if they did make a Sonic Adventure 3, they will then have to use all of the properties of all of the Sonic games that came after Sonic Adventure 2. So that's not going to fucking work. They're going to have to reference Wisp, they're going to have to reference Blaze, they're going to have to reference the story in which took place in Sonic Lost World, in a world that actually has a level called Lost fucking World. So yeah, I don't even think Sega should be in the same room as anybody who is discussing the conception of a potential hypothetical Sonic Adventure 3. I think they should fucking put their heads in the sand and stay there until Sonic Adventure 3 is even made. Hell, that's why I even made the video about how Sega doesn't deserve the Sonic intellectual property. It just fucking doesn't. And the other reason why I don't think that Sega should make Sonic Adventure 3 is because we should be the ones making Sonic Adventure 3. Okay, let me explain. I am what is called a dumb anti-Nintendo hater. Even though Sega has its issues like union busting, Nintendo is evil, especially for going after ROM hackers of their own IPs, such as Pokemon. And thanks to a recently released video from Digital Gaming, we now know that Pokemon is using AI to go after ROM hackers who are using Pokemon IP. And according to the video itself, it stated that AI is the future of Pokemon, which, yeah, I don't like that. You can't just quell the development of ROM hacks made by your very fans and then use AI to make another 1,000 fucking Pokemon. Sega, on the other hand, is a lot better at this, but I've had some conversations with Sonic fans before, and even those Sonic fans think that if we made a Sonic Adventure 3, we would probably get some kind of DMCA, or even a cease and desist, to which I would say, I don't fucking care. Make this project open source if we have to. There's another thing I want to say real quick before I get to my bottom point here, and that is if for whatever reason there's an ultimatum to where Sega has to make Sonic Adventure 3 or else the fans who are working on this open source project gets a DMCA, then I think that Sega has to pay contenders. Please let me explain before I get all of the hate comments. I already explained in my Knuckles video that I don't exactly agree with how Ken Penders addresses the political topics of fascism and genocide in his Knuckles Archie comic. So this really has nothing to do with me liking the Archie comic or how Ken Penders addresses these broader, very heavy topics. But I think that since these characters are already established and they're already kind of bleeding into the Sonic Adventure 1 continuity just a little bit, I really do think that we owe it to Ken Penders since he is a working class individual who is not, literally Yuji Naka getting arrested for insider trading like every other CEO under the capitalist system behind closed doors. Using the Echidna tribe and addressing the Echidna tribe within the Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 and Sonic Adventure 3 continuity would give closure to all of this. Yes, I am referring to Edmund and Dimitri and Enerjack and Locke and Julie Sue and their relationship to the main Sonic cast. I want that in Sonic Adventure 3. And again, just to re-emphasize, this has nothing to do with me liking Ken Penders or being a fan of his, but it is about being thorough and consistent within the Sonic continuity before Sonic Adventure 1 and 2. What led up to Sonic Adventure 1 and 2? Well, all of this other shit that Knuckles and his ancestors has gone through. Be consistent. That's what I'm looking for here. And yeah, even though I do find Ken Penders to be a pretty disagreeable person, I do believe that as a working class person, he at least deserves to get paid for his own creation and his work and his story writing. And also, yeah, I think Ian Flynn should be involved in this too. Why the fuck not? Ian Flynn is great. I don't disagree with that at all. But this circumstance would only exist if Sega has to make Sonic Adventure 3 and if the fans cannot make Sonic Adventure 3. Because ultimately, I do believe that it is up to us to make that story, not Sega. Anyway, back to what I was saying earlier. Recently, I've been amazed, in shock and in awe of some of the shit that people can do. Like, check out the Sonic Amateur Games Expo. That shit is just a swarm of really impressive technological advancement made by Sonic fans. Or what about the Sonic Hacking Contest, where people make ROM hacks and mods of Sonic games? People are so innovative when it comes to these games. I mean, it makes my fucking head spin.
Wow, my head's spinning!
And I don't know, but with having seen some of the entries of both the Sonic Amateur Games Expo and the Sonic Hacking Contest, I genuinely think that the fans do in fact have the capacity to make Sonic Adventure 3 if we wanted to. I mean, hey, I started playing guitar because of Sonic Adventure's soundtrack. Maybe I am being way too ambitious saying this, but if we're talking about level designers, character designers, story writers, musicians, sound designers, voice actors, and really like making something that is in the scope of Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, what's really the difference here between making a ROM hack and making our own Sonic Adventure 3? If you really want to be ambitious about it, you could port it specifically to the Dreamcast, or maybe make some emulators that are Dreamcast inspired. Maybe I am being too ambitious, and I think that's a fair point to make if that's your criticism of this video. And maybe my head is completely in the clouds in terms of game development, but didn't Sonic teach us to reach for the stars. We can make this world a believable and real world if we really wanted to. I myself do not have the skills to do game development, but I am a musician, and if somebody were to start making a Sonic Adventure 3 and they wanted me to make music for the game, I know that as a musician who is heavily inspired by Sonic Adventure 1's soundtrack, that I would take that offer in a heartbeat. And I know that so many people would do the same. But anyway, that's what this is. It's just a hypothetical what if. What if we made Sonic Adventure 3? I think it is something that would be really cool to have. And it would be something that we could actually do within our lifetime. Probably. But until then, who knows? Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. But we'll see. Maybe someone will watch this video and feel inspired. They'll go back to playing Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 and be like, wow, these games really did just like knock me off my socks when I was young. I want to relive that experience of being knocked off my socks by these games again. How can I do that? How can I create that enrapturing experience for others to feel once more? And sure, maybe that person probably won't take most of the advice that I gave in this video about Eggman and Knuckles and Shadow and how the characters control. Maybe that person will make their own original video game. And if that's the case, I hope that that's what I did. And I feel like, at the very least, that people are inspired by this video to go out and create. And honestly, that's all I could ask for. That if you're inspired by anything that I said in this video, that your inspiration takes you places. So anyway, that's all I have to say. And I appreciate you listening to what I have to say about Sonic Adventure 3, if it were to be a game. Anyway, I don't know how to wrap this up, so I'm just gonna end it now. Bye.
I'm at peace once more.